Hello, and welcome to Right to Be Wrong, the show that revives the art of conversation, accommodating varied views on sports, culture, politics, world events, and every topic under the sun. After all, you have a right to be wrong. Here are your hosts, Dave and Tony.
Tony, my man, how's everything been? And I mean that like mean, as in bean counter. See what I did there?
I like what you're doing there, Dave. Been good, been busy.
Bean counting.
Yep, all good. Like I said, it's been busy couple of months, but I'm looking forward to the warmer weather. I'm looking forward to finals football coming up with that good time of year. There's a
My dog's
coming off. How many rounds we got left? We have 3 rounds left in NRL. I think you've been a bit too. I get it, Dave. When you ride a team and you care about them, and all you see is the negative as opposed to the positive. Like the Roosters towed them up the other day, but the Dogs just weren't there. But I still think they've got it in them, right? If they finish top 4, they're going to get a crack at either, if they're lucky, right, and the draw works out, in the first week of the finals, the Dogs could be playing Canberra, right?
They could, but I think we're not quite there yet. I think another year. I think this is still a learning year. We've got a step to be real.
But what I think it'd be a waste of a year if you got bounced in straight sets, right?
Yeah, but it's on the cards.
You want to win a final.
It's on the cards.
I want to win a final.
Well, anyway, before we get too far down the rabbit hole of the NRL season.
Let's just touch on one point, but for all those Parramatta fans out
Leading suffering.
1986 is now 25-14, carry the one. That's, next year's a banner year. 30 years, Dave.
40 years since they've won anything.
How good.
I love it. As a Bulldogs man, I love seeing the Eels suffer.
So, Dave, what are we talking about tonight? We are talking about, I want to say this because I got, and then we'll use some context around where I first heard this term. We are talking about NIMBYism. NIMBY, NIMBYs, not in my backyard. Refers to community opposition to developments perceived as disruptive, even if those developments are broadly beneficial, right?
So now, beneficial, that's a subjective term.
True. Where did I first hear this term? 1994.
I was 20.
I was 23.
I'm sure I had hair.
I was working in an office, and the CEO of that office was raising money via the church that he went to, and he wanted staff to contribute via weekly deductions from payroll, right? Because they were building some type of church in the local area, and he wanted staff to contribute, right?
To the building of the church.
Oh, it was something like that. It was some like project of the CEO and the thinking.
I can understand because the church doesn't have a lot of money.
That's right. It was like the Christadelphians or something. Some
far edge
Christian outreach
derivation.
And I remember a group of us said, no. Not for no other reason that, no, we're the lowest paid people in the joint. No one's deducting a couple of bucks a week from us. Rack off, right?
Yeah.
So I put my Gen X hat on and said, no. And there's one guy turns around who's well-to-do, I think wrapped up in the church, and goes, serious case of NIMBYism. And I've gone.
That's the first time you heard it. And you're like, what's a NIMBY?
I said, if I knew what that actually meant, I might come over there and drop you, pal. And back then it wasn't a case of, let's just type that into the Google internet machine.
There was no Google. 1994.
Oh, there was Google. His name was Trevor. He sat in the corner office.
Go and ask Trev.
Where's Trev? He was our finance director and he knew everything. So I walked down. Trev, quick question. Old mate out here just hit me with NIMBYism.
What the hell's
What the hell's that?
I know what a Gumby is.
And he explained it, right? And I'm going, I get it now. And that just fired me up even more, thinking people just can't make a decision based on what they feel is best for them without being labelled something.
So it's been stuck in your craw for 31 years.
Yeah, that's right. About 31. But it came back up on my radar over the weekend. There is a development in a lovely pocket of the lower North Shore, either Castle Cove, where there is a
There's struggling families down there in Castle Cove.
In Castle Cove, there must be some type of precinct, but there's some shops, which is a bit of a hub, but they're looking at building, I think, some 10 or 11-story apartment block buildings, slight increase in density of housing, around a transport hub, which I support, right? And then the locals have all kicked off. and they're going to march the streets. And I just saw the picture of the locals were all fired up, Dave.
That was all the Mrs. Mengels.
Oh, there are lots of grey hair there. Right.
Well,
Because they were clearly worried about, the impact on their suburb. And they did raise some legitimate points, right, around schools, transport, public hospitals. You just can't keep on pouring people into confined spaces.
Well, you can't have the riffraff moving into Castle Cove. I mean, that's what Penrith is for.
That's right. So I think that's what triggered. I thought to myself, where are we as a society in Australia and as an economy? And,
but this happens all around the world.
Absolutely. But population targets aside, I support the controlled increase in the density of housing across suburban Sydney. What does that mean? If you got a red brick house in the suburbs, 20 k's, 25 k's out of Sydney, and it's on a 1,000 square metre block, if you want to knock it down and put 4 townhouses on it, you should be able to. If you want to knock it down and build a 5-bedroom, double-story house that you live in your family, you should be able to, right? I actually think they should encourage people. I think, am I right, Dave, or is it right for me to say the quarter-acre block, it's gone?
It depends on where you're talking about. The quarter-acre block and bigger still exists in regions.
Sorry, what I meant was aspirationally, is the quarter-acre block gone?
It's gone in big cities, right? It's gone. I think if you get a 500 square meter block today in a big city, and we're not talking about the existing, we're talking about the new stuff, that's probably considered big. So that's definitely, that aspirational stuff is gone. Now, I understand your point to say, if you have this and you want to develop it, knock yourself out, go for it. Because I've got a big block and I would love to do that. I've got the other issue. The council won't allow me to, I can put a duplex on it and it's a corner block and it'd work well, but I can't Torrens title them. So they've got to be sold in one. And so I don't want that. I'd prefer to be able to do what you say. Here's the problem though, to counter my own position. Is it sounds good in theory, say your block, we need more housing, medium high density is the solution. However, if the infrastructure around the road can't be widened, and putting in another 500 people means that it doesn't take you 5 minutes to get out of your street in the morning, it takes you 35 minutes, that's a problem. If the plumbing, the same things, the overflow can't handle it. If the local power station and the transmitter can't take the increased load. So it's very simplistic to say, let's go with medium and high density housing.
Around transport hubs where it makes sense.
Now, around transport hubs, yes, right? So that to me is where the biggest wins can be in all our big cities. Because it's like, well, you already live near a train line. So you can't pretend like, oh, you're going to put a train line in. I've never had a train line. It's going to go right through my tennis court. Yeah, it's like, well, no, you've been living near the train line. So what we're going to do is along that corridor. But there's still issues with that too, because one of the misconceptions is that building high density housing is quick and cheap. It actually costs more per unit on average to build than to build a house. So I agree with the increase in certain corridors, but I want to see a correlation at the same time of an increase, or beforehand, I want to see an improvement in the infrastructure to handle that development. Now, as far as NIMBYism goes, I could easily make the argument for them, because if we turn around and destroy all the aspirational areas, where would you go to live if you decide you'll work 70 hours a week, you want to take your family forward, you grew up in a 1-bedroom home with 6 of you in it? Where do you go if everywhere around you is just going to be high density? Where are the housing areas? Where's the aspirational areas? What happens? Now,
but you can have a mix, Dave.
Well, hopefully you'd have a mix.
Like you can be an aspirational suburb like Castle Hill, but on top of the metro station, they've got 4 or 5 or 6 30-story apartment blocks.
Built very, very shoddily.
Yeah.
They've all been slapped with defect notices.
Well,
that's a separate issue from
NIMBYism. That's around the hub. And then,
correct. And that's the way I like.
And then a 5-minute drive away, you've still got the beautiful streets of Glenhaven or Dural or whatever it might be.
In fact, I think you've probably hit on one of the areas in Sydney that would have been the best example of development that didn't destroy the area, in fact, enhanced the area. The only issue they got wrong is they let dodgy developers do it, and those high-rise towers are not high-end quality built.
That's right.
That's the only issue there. But the NIMBYism, a lot of it will die out with these people anyway.
Which
Because-
people, Dave?
Well, the rich, well-to-do,
The
salt
boomer-
and peppered haired
The boomers.
boomers, but the wealthy boomers. Because what's going to happen is their kids inherit it. And generally speaking, you don't tend to have, for the most part, they don't have one child. They normally have two, if not three, four. So they can't all say, oh, well, let's live in mum and dad's house. So it'll go on the market and it'd be sold anyway. So some of this stuff will get sold off and people will profit from the development anyway. But have you ever seen anyone that's gone and protested and suddenly it stopped whatever was happening?
No,
Now, I'm sure it's probably happened somewhere, but yeah, for every protest you've ever seen, if you ever go, oh, wow, they stopped that.
oh no, this doesn't happen, right?
I think it's more cathartic for people.
Like I think it's actually part of their desire to express their democratic right to protest against, something that they believe they've been done wrong against. And is it fair for me to say that the types of people who would protest that would protest a lot of stuff, right?
Oh, I think it's the opposite. I think NIMBYism gets the people. It's the only protest you do.
Okay.
I think it's like you don't really care. It's like, Jonathan, are you going to come to the protest? What protest? Protest about the development for the 50 stories. It's going to happen down the road. Oh, no. I'm not going, Sarah. What do you mean you're not going, Jonathan? Well, Sarah, I own the development. It's like that would be the sort of thing. But I don't see those sorts of people out protesting for Palestine, and I'm just using it as an example of what we've had, or protesting to stop the war in Ukraine. Or I just don't see it. I think for them, they couldn't give a shit about a protest, and it's like, all of a sudden there's going to be people doing donuts in our cul-de-sac, so let's go protest.
Yeah, because I remember when the Northwest Metro in Sydney was announced 10 years ago, whenever it was, the people in Castle Hill got all up in arms. Well, train stations, they bring the crims.
They bring people like David.
That's right.
We don't need people like David from Blacktown.
That's right.
Can't be happening.
So, I think there is an element of concern that's justified, but at the same time, controlled, increased density of housing in a controlled manner to the right quality around transport hubs is some way you can increase supply, right? Affordable supply, ? But for me, it does make sense because you and I growing up, Dave.
I haven't grown up yet, Tony. I just got older.
You and I growing up, our dream was, I actually want the quarter-acre block.
Yeah.
I actually want to be able to mow the cricket pitch into my backyard.
Yeah.
Right.
And have my father kick my ass because all I did was turn the middle of the grass to death.
That's right. Whereas increasingly for young people coming through now, they just want a place to live, right? And what's more, they don't have the time.
They don't want to mow lawns either.
That's right. Or do edges or clean pools or do anything. They just want to go out, do stuff, enjoy their life. And there's,
I reckon there's a lot of people under 25. If you put a mower in front of them and said, start it, I reckon over half couldn't start the mower.
That'd struggle. Yeah. So I think
maybe if it was a push button.
Yep.
If they had a pull mower, I think they'd be in real trouble.
And then,
or they might look at you and go, "What's that?"
That's right.
That's a fancy shopping cart.
That's right. So I think increasingly, Dave, they're lending themselves to, or we have to lend ourselves to increased density in terms of our housing, and population growth. I'm just going to park. Right, because I think that needs to be.
Well, I don't think you can if you say we're going to have to increase, because the question's got to be, well, what's the population growth for?
And so I've actually done some research, and I've there's been a few estimates of.
I love when you do research. It gives a certain gravitas to the podcast, and my bullshit just doesn't have.
I like that. I actually asked and went and did some research on, because you mentioned the Australian government, or actually both sides of Parliament. This is someone's come up with an estimate that says 50 million by
40 million. So another 13.5 million people in the next 40 years. So that would be 2065.
So 2065, you're saying we're going to be at what number?
I could add that. I could come and be a bean counter. Have you got any spare beans?
Yeah, we've got plenty of red ones. I actually said, what are the population projected numbers for 2050?
Wouldn't be far.
And it said the ABS projects that Australian population could reach between 34 and 46 million by 2071.
Yeah.
Okay. But then they've gone and done some other research and said that media estimates through like property.com is saying about 38 million, but the WHO data, which is the global estimate, it's a bit more conservative. They're saying about 32.5 million. And then I said, I wanted to know, I went and did some research on what the average, or what the mortality rate is. What's the increase in our population if you exclude migration, right? And it's about 1.5%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're below replacement, our birth rate.
That's right. So I said, okay, if we just maintain that, what number does it get to? Because I didn't want to pollute the conversation of that 50 million number, which is opening up a whole box of discussion, with the discussion around the need for high density housing to provide an increased supply of housing. Because if we stop migration now, Dave, we would still need an increase in supply in housing.
Okay, go continue on.
So to that extent, I'm
So
saying,
is that far? How far behind are we then?
I
If we
would
need an increased supply.
No, I think if, to your earlier point in another podcast, if we yanked the chain on migration,
Yep.
we could correct the supply issue pretty quickly.
Within the 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, but I think we need to get back to that.
Yes,
I think we need to get to a point where there's actually an oversupply.
correct.
Right.
And that's going to help people get in the property ladder, because
right.
it's like anything, right? If everyone needs an apple a day to live, and there's 20 people in the population with 50 apples, well, what are you selling your apples for? Not much.
And that's
But you reverse that, and there's only 20 apples and 50 people need one a day to live. How much money are you going to get for your apples?
That's right. And that's where I was saying, we can correct it, but I want to get to the point where, and I do the similar thing at work, where people will say, there's too much demand for technological change at work. There's too much demand. And I go, okay, we'll get more resources to do it. Get another developer. No, but there's still too much. No. How many more developers do you need? Is it going to be 2? Going to be 3? I want to get to the point where my supply of resources to get that job done, and the jobs that need to get done, the supply is greater than that. And then we can make some decisions. Okay, I'm going to let go of that resource, and now we're going to manage demand, right? Whereas at the moment, we're always chasing, and it always becomes a massive political issue about the lack of housing in Australia. I want to get to the point where we are oversupplied. Seriously, there's 3 to 5% of housing that's vacant.
Yeah, it would be a great place to bet. Politically, I can't see anyone doing it, because at the moment, and this is probably where it might change, because as the boomers, well, here's something I think that could help change it. And here's again where in a previous episode, I defended the boomers to the point that they didn't create a lot of the things that they have. That's how it came to be with population growth. And some of it they did through playing the rules of the game as they are. Here's something that I do see as a problem. Now, people have come out and said there's a lot of older people in houses that are too big, and that's part of the supply problem. Now, according to information, that's something like approximately 66,000 houses. Let's call it 70. So that's not the silver bullet, but let's run with that because it would help. The problem is, let's use someone in middle Sydney that's a $2 million house, because we know that's pretty standard now for a decent-sized block in a house, $2 million as a starter. The problem is, you say to those people they're on a pension or part pension, you should sell your house and downsize so it frees it up. But what we then do is, at the moment, while that money's tied up in their house, they're not paying any tax on it. But let's say they go and buy $1 million retirement village, townhouse, smaller house in a region, and they've got $1 million left over. We then say, oh, you've got too much money for the pension, or you've got, whatever. To me, part of this to incentivize people, I would say, whatever you sell your house for, up to that amount of investment, you will generate tax-free and you won't lose your pension. So let's use those numbers. 2 million. $1 million spent in your place, $1 million left over, invested. Let's say they're getting 5%, they're getting $50,000 a year. We don't tax it. We don't take your pension off you.
Or Dave, just to simplify it, I agree entirely. That $1 million doesn't count in terms of your means test.
That's what I mean, forever. But you won't even pay tax off income generated, right? And people say, oh, that's not fair. Well, hang on. You've now freed up the house, right? They've paid stamp duty on the next place. So you've picked up a bit. And guess what people are going to do with that money? They're going to spend it. It's going to go around the economy. Because the reason why those people aren't on a cruise, haven't bought a new car, aren't at the cafe, is because they can't afford it. So the type of people that you're going to free up the capital and turn into liquidity are the type of people that all bar maybe 1% are going to drive it through the economy instead of having it sit up tight in that house. So I think that would be one way to incentivize that element of the market to start bringing some more houses on to help supply. But that's only one variable.
I agree. Let's touch on a couple of other NIMBYs. And while we're here, I just want to share with you, Dave. From time to time, I think I'm going to take a position of a YIMBY.
Yes, in my backyard.
Are you ready? From time to actually, this is Dave all over. Banana. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone.
Yeah, let's all have. Actually, for a country, you know what our population per square kilometer is the second lowest in the world.
What's the lowest? Russia? China?
No, Nepal. That's Nepal.
Is that right?
And we're like, they were 2.1 per square kilometer, and we were like 2.3 or something. We may have gone up since, but point being, considering the size of our country,
so you're saying, Dave,
we should all have half a square kilometer.
Half a square kilometer
each.
Yeah. Would ours be close? Would we be neighbours? Nah.
Well, we'd be within QE. You know that saying, that old Australian saying? That's what it's called. If you can hear the QE. Oh, mate, nah, it wasn't within QE, mate.
Let's touch on
I should do a whole episode where I've got the Cuba on and I've got my little corks and I can just do a whole Australiana hour for people, speak in Australian slang and with a real bush accent for our international listeners. They wouldn't understand it. We're like, screw that. We'd put translation at the bottom of the video.
I'm flat out like a lizard drinking.
Oh, mate, I'm being busier than a cat burying shit in the marble floor, mate. That's one of my favourite sayings about being busy.
So we've touched on housing density and the issue, and another classic NIMBYism, and you're going to love this one, is public transport. Now, we in Sydney, and I saw some stats today, that since the opening of the M1 Metro, which is the expansion of the metro line started at Rouse Hill, went to Chatswood, then they opened up the Chatswood to Sydenham line, the patronage has doubled, 99.6% on time, every 4 minutes, transformed how the city works.
I love the metro.
All underground.
In fact, if I didn't want to get out of Sydney, or as the Mauritian Queen and I now call it, Shitney, if I didn't want to get out, if I thought that we developed and our infrastructure had kept ahead of or up with our population growth, for me, Castle Hill's a great place to live. It has everything you want, and then you can be in the city on that one train now.
That's right.
So if I was still working for a Remco, I probably would have gone up that way and then one train into Martin Place.
So that's a classic where people get all fired up now.
All fired up.
Yeah. The significant transport infrastructure projects that are currently in play are all underground.
Yep.
So the expansion of that metro line I spoke of, the Sydenham to Bankstown, and there's also the Western line that they're building from the CBD, the second tunnel that's going to go, the tunnel for the metro rail from Parramatta to the CBD, which will double capacity. And then there's a third one from St Mary's current train station to the new airport.
What they don't have, and this is passing, is they don't have a north-south. At the moment, all our public transport is all roads lead to Rome. We still treat the CBD as
that's right.
It's everything, and everything must go into there. And it's like, how about you do something from sort of Dural or past Dural that runs through Parramatta into Liverpool? Because that's the second CBD. So you don't need to just keep going into the city. How about you fix places like Windsor Road, because everyone can jump on the metro and go straight through that way.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the issues. Everything's east-west.
And you might recall, I think this is a generational thing. I'm sure that there used to be a lot more protests around some of these public transport issues, where they're going to put bus stops, where they're going to put car parks, where they're going to build massive shopping centres. A lot of that seems to have gone by the way in the last 20, 25 years.
Well, I think it's gone from where we were kids and it was seen as noise and a headache because everyone drove everywhere and you had your space, to now it's convenience. It's like, it's great. I walk to the station. I leave my place. I walk to the station in 5 minutes. I jump on. I walk to the office. It's now a selling point. So I think generationally, we've changed in that regard. Where for me, like once upon a time, if you said to me, would you ever live in a townhouse? I would have said no. Where now, as I mentioned, if I want to stay in Sydney, a great townhouse near Castle Hill Metro with the shopping centre there, all the restaurants around, get into work in no time, that'd be great. So I think that the NIMBYism, you will see it start to die off, because there'll be people even in those areas that are still going to want that convenience of getting around the place that infrastructure will provide. And the generations coming through aren't going to want to have a house that's half an acre, because you probably can't afford it, right? You don't have the time to maintain it yourself. And you think of what it costs people, because we don't have Mexicans crossing the border like the US. So we've actually got to pay $2,000 a week for people to be mowing lawns and gardens and maintaining tennis courts. That's a lot of money, even if you're rich. If you start looking, my house cost me $200,000 a year to maintain.
I'm hearing you. Now, I want to touch on a third one.
Third rail?
No, a third
Testicle?
area.
Third testicle. You got to read to a third testicle, Tone.
A third area. Actually, funny story that. Mate of mine.
2 testicle Dave.
Had his 3 kids. Went to get
one for each testicle.
Went to get a vasectomy, right? Went and had the snip. Called the next day. Are you good for a bike ride on Sunday this week? This was 4 days away. He goes, Chech, I'm not feeling nothing. I'm good. Checked in 2 days later on the Wednesday. Yo, J-Man, we're good? Yeah, man. I'm telling. I've been so lucky. I've been so good, yeah. Call him on the Saturday. Just checking in again, man, making sure. So 7 o'clock at the meeting point tomorrow, there's an issue, Chech. What's going on? I've got 3 testicles. It took 4 days to blow up, and it did.
Actually, when I had the vasectomy, I never had any issues at all. In fact, I said to the doc that did it, I wish I'd met him beforehand. I probably would have married him and say he's had such a gentle touch.
So, Dave, another area of investment by government, by private enterprise, that always causes increasingly causes some dissension and some protest. And this is going to be a little bit of a poke for you, because you're going to love this one.
You're poking.
Renewable energy projects delayed by local environmental or visual impact objections. Now, leave the politics of climate change out.
That's the trouble. I think you can't.
Yeah, you can.
I think if it was proven and factual, and over the last 10 or 20 years, they'd not been manipulating things to try and present a benefit to something that is now falling apart, it's a different story. But there's some ironic stuff as well. So, there's been countries in the world that have turned around, environmentalists say we want windmills because it's more environmentally friendly, and then they've killed whole forests to put up ugly windmills, and people are like, how's that environmental? You've just destroyed the habitat of whatever, and you've cleared all this land to put up windmills. So it all depends. I think one of the problems with the whole renewable thing is that we've got to start having the adult conversation about what is factual and what's not, and then we can talk about whether or not there's genuine NIMBYism.
Yeah.
But would you want one of those big, or a whole farm of those big windmills within eyesight of your place?
For a small cost. As long as I get my clip of the ticket.
Well, there would be a cost, and the cost would be to the declining value of your property.
No, as long as it's pouring, as long as I've got a battery on my property that's storing all the energy.
And then you'd be okay.
And then I'm lighting up half of northwestern Sydney with the glow in my backyard.
That's exactly right.
So I thought,
well, this is what NIMBYism is, right? It's that it comes about because there's a sense of depreciation of someone's asset.
That's right.
That's why they fight it.
That's right.
And they depreciate the value of what I owned.
But not only not what I own, you're going to depreciate the value of my life experience as well. The walks that I take in the park that's about to go because they're putting a car park there for the bus stop you're building for the new freeway you've just built.
Yeah, they paved paradise, put up a parking lot.
We know.
I think there's a song in that, Tone. I think maybe we could write a song.
We could. Absolutely, we could.
But the two things happen at the same time. They're simultaneous. So if you look at that 6 properties at Double Bay, they all got together and sold for like $25 million to the developers. They're cheering. And their neighbours are like, oh, you just screwed us.
But Dave, if you look up at where you were just talking earlier about Castle Hill, off Carrington Road there, all those streets that run parallel now or perpendicular to the new metro station.
All using big words. Did you have alphabet soup this morning?
At Showground Road, not one of them sold. 20, 30, 40 houses sold. Yep. All of them went, right?
Yep.
And I think at some point, when people see that they can make money out of it, they'll be going, yeah, we're out. Someone's paying overs.
Here's the thing about the YIMBY over the NIMBY. it's still about timing, right? So, for example, I mentioned that I would like my block to be able to be Torrens title duplex, because it would add a few $100,000 to my block. Now, if I was, say, 30 years of age, I'd probably go, it's not the right time. I've just moved in here. I like the area. I'm close to everything I want. At my age now, I'm like, you know what? It's time to get out of Sydney and fly down and do the podcast. For me now, it's like other timing is good. So that's the other part of it. Because let's say, for example, you had this opportunity that came up and the boys have got 3 and 4 years left respectively at their school. You're like, come back to me in 4 years' time.
That's right.
Yeah. Otherwise, it can be disruptive.
That's right.
At the wrong time.
But you're right. So, what do they say, Dave, about self-interest? Undefeated champion of the world, right?
Yeah.
So people there at the right time, they'll be going, like those same protesters now who are complaining about Castle Crag, if they're ready to sell up, right, and move up to the mid-north coast for retirement, they'll be going, where do we sign?
Correct. And it's not quite 100% true, but there's a lot of truth in the story attributed to Kerry Packer, the late Kerry Packer, one of Australia's former most wealthy, when he was having the trying to get the rights to cricket through Cricket Australia, and he's alleged to have said, there's a little bit of whore in all of us, gentlemen. Now name your price. I think there's an element of truth to that. I have proven through myself that it's not 100% because I have rejected some good offers at times because it's just not well. And I don't even mean property; I mean jobs or whatever. So I don't think it's quite a blanket, but for the most part, I think if the timing's right, all of us have a price.
That's right, because that's a good segue. So there's a political dimension here, Dave. Local councils sometimes, for their own benefit, politically will amplify the NIMBY voices.
Yeah.
Whereas state governments...
And the YIMBYs.
Yeah.
They'll go both ways. Oh, we want more rates, so let's amplify this. Or it's like, oh, no, I live in the area too. Everyone wants a riffraff.
Whereas the state and federal government would typically push for growth.
Yeah.
Right. But local councils, where it suits them and where they can get a good deal with the developer to build some amenities, to build some more shops, to maybe contribute to a public pool that's going to be in the precinct they're about to develop, they're all in as well. Right. So at all levels of government, there's a political dimension here where if it suits them politically and they feel like it's the vote winner, they're going to go and do it.
The thing that I would like to see start changing, though, is that when we do these developments, commercial or residential, I'd love to start seeing a proper master plan. I don't mean just for the local area. I want at some point the state government steps in and says, look, here are the areas where we have enough capacity in the infrastructure of public transport, schools and the like. Here are the priority areas that we think can be developed within the next 3 to 5 years. And here are the areas that's up to us to get the infrastructure in place for the second and third phase to be developed. Because I do think at the moment we do develop and then we go, ooh, we need to widen the road. Oh, another hospital. Schools are a bit full. And you really shouldn't be having development before you've got that infrastructure in place.
But we spoke about this, Dave, a few podcasts ago where we said private-public partnerships in terms of building infrastructure for government. Let's build a 2-lane motorway up through the northwestern corridor of Sydney. 2 lanes, oh, geez, yeah. Probably going to need 4 lanes each way, right? The private partner in that partnership is collecting all the way through. They're getting more traffic. They get to charge more maintenance. Oh, actually, it should have been 6 each way. It's something we're really poor at doing, but if I wanted to look at what the master plan was for Sydney, I wouldn't even know where to look. I do know that
Do we have one?
No, I do know there are 2 dedicated growth corridors, being the northwest and the southwest, which makes geographical sense because north we hit the Hawkesbury, south we hit the national park down there, and directly west we hit the Nepean River, and you start climbing the mountain.
Yeah, and I think the other thing the other thing we need to do too is that in a country the size of Australia, as I've just said, that we have the second lowest per square kilometre population. I think as part of a combined government policy on incentivising business, both foreign direct investment and local, we should be looking at more of our green belt. So I'd like us to, in each state, as a rough figure, it might vary on population, but in each state create, say, a couple of special economic zones, a la Deng Xiaoping in China in 1979. And you won't hear me on this podcast say let's emulate China very often at all. But one thing they got right was incentivizing business and creating growth in those regions. So what we can do is say, well, okay, as part of this future growth strategy that we're projected to go to this 40 million, 50 million, 100 million, whatever number they want, provided they justify it. But start looking into a lot of the green areas in each state where you can turn around and say to big business, these are special economic zones. These are tax-free for 50 years. But what you need to do is as you build your factories, build your offices, you're responsible for building the infrastructure. So, what we'll start to do then is you can see the job growth, you can see what's happening. And then the people, for example, that say, I can't afford a house in Sydney, you go, well, these houses are expected to start at 450,000 on 600 square meters, decent sizes. And here's where Google's going to have 5,000 people. And this company is going to manufacture, renewable technology or whatever we're doing for the future. Or these are going to be data centers, AI data centers. So start to combine it that you say, well, what's the projected growth? What industries do we believe we can grow? What's our policy to incentivize big business to go there? How do we incentivize young people to go out into these regions? And I think that would be a much better way to actually start to do this rather than, we've got Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Yeah, let's just keep stacking everyone on top of each other like Lego.
I've got an idea, Dave.
I saw the light bulb just go.
We should do a podcast series on nation building. What do you say?
I think that's a brilliant idea, Tone, and let's do it. You know what? Go ahead, put together, give me 10 episodes.
I'm loving it. Is there a middle ground, Dave? So there's pro-NIMBYism and anti-NIMBYism. And
they can all start living in shifts in their houses.
That's right. And it all lives, like government policy is core to this, right? But government planning as well in terms of how do we plan for what it is we want to be in 30, 40, 50 years? And we've spoken about this ad nauseum around the inability of government to look beyond 3 to 6 years as opposed to 30 or 40. But someone needs to be accountable for that. But is there a more like nuanced position in terms of this? NIMBYism can both be good and bad, right?
It can be. So, for example, on a macro level, let's say NIMBYism is, let's call it Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, right? Let's say on a macro level, we go, look, we're at capacity for the infrastructure we have, but we support this plan. So let's look to South Australia, Tasmania, Western Australia, Northern Territory. As part of that too, because, people, when I talk about these areas, people go, but a lot of Australian people don't want to live. It's very hot and it's humid. And okay, well, as part of the nuance, because I'm a thinker, why can't we start encouraging people from certain regions, in Southeast Asia, that we create visas to encourage them to come and live here? And they're used to living in the tropics. For them, we say we're going to create an easier pathway for PR and citizenship into Australia if you're under 35 years of age, irrelevant of your skill set. However, you can't come to Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. You'll be going into, tropical North Queensland. You'll be going into, Western Australia, all these areas. And for Tasmania, in reverse, you might, again, try and target people from the Nordic countries or whatever they're used to, that type of climate. But what we can start to do is actually have a proper nuanced hand-in-hand policy that starts to look at the interconnectedness of the type of people we want to bring in, the type of people that live in these areas, the type of company that would benefit from the tax incentives. Let's tap into our Australian superannuation. As I've mentioned before, let's turn around and say where our superannuation's worth, whatever number it is, billions, are we in the trillions?
Trillions.
We're in the trillions. And as I've mentioned, let's create policy. It says we've got a new policy. It says 10% or 20% of all superannuation must be invested in Australian infrastructure. And let's start to tap into that as part of the funding that goes into these areas, these special economic zones and this development. But this is the sort of thing that, to be honest, it's great that we have the conversation. And I love your idea on a 10-part series on nation building time. We're going to do it.
I also want to have a 3-part series on the floating of the Greek drachma.
I'm up for that too. Float the drachma, I say. Get out of the EU, Greece. But why is it that this sort of conversation's not happening at our leadership level. That's one of the things that concerns me.
I'm frustrated at the fact that the conversation's not happening, right? Like a meaningful conversation. What frustrates me is there's not even like an initial thinking about someone, you know what, we've got the Treasury bean counters and whoever else, the Department of Planning and Population Growth, whoever they might be, thinking about this, right, and providing some type of insight as to what it might look like at 35 million or 40 million and how we can achieve it, right? And is that the right number? What is the right number?
Correct, because the right number might be bigger.
It's
like for the size of Australia, in all honesty, and I'm not saying in the next 20 years, and we really do just send ourselves into the floor productivity-wise and lifestyle, but why can't we be 100 million? We've got plenty of other countries around the world with similar numbers, if not more, without our natural resources and size. So why can't we have a 100-year plan? Why can't we get, wow, I'm going to sound like a communist. I'm going to take the second thing from China, take a 100-year plan from China. But why can't we have those sorts of things? And it doesn't have to be. When I say this is where I would defend either side of politics, that having this plan, if we get to year 40 and I'm just about to drop off the perch, and you've hit 90% of the targets, 82% of the targets, I'm not going, oh, we were supposed to have by now, but God, we're not even aiming for anything. We are really aimless. We everything is ad hoc that leads to NIMBYism, because no one can understand, well, why'd you pick my suburb?
Yeah.
Why are you destroying my lifestyle? So it's, if we start to get an overarching macro level view and vision, and we can say to everyone in the country, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's the areas that there will be some disruption in this part, and there'll be other benefit to you in this part. Let's get the buy-in and everyone be on it. Because if you start to do that, there'll be opportunity, right? So there might be people who'll turn around and say, you know what, kids, your mum and I, we can't afford to give you $200,000 each, but we can afford to give you $25,000 each if you're going out to Dubbo to be part of the new project. And that can help you buy your first place there, because a townhouse in Dubbo is going to cost you $300,000 for a figure. So this sort of thing is where I think you can negate a lot of NIMBYism, because you're not going to have anyone in the backyard. You're going to places that people aren't.
Yeah, I get it.
Or limited numbers.
So central again to the discussion, Dave, is the need for some like government guardrails, government guidance, decisions around what it is we want to be, and then the most realistic and reasonable path to get there. But as you and I often stumble up against, is we just don't see it happening. Right?
No, because if I was part of a round table, or we were putting this together for, I'd be looking at things and saying, okay, well, we know far north Queensland, we've got great tourism, but we haven't tapped enough. So let's tap more tourism. Inland, we've got all this mining and we've got nothing. So if we go mine, let's start doing all the refineries of the stuff we mine, and then let's start manufacturing, because we're not moving the materials too far, because we can start to manufacture the batteries off the lithium that we mined, or the cobalt, or whatever it may be. And then we'll create, so you can even link what you're doing to what's in the area, using the natural factor endowments. Because one of the things that is wrong about current Australia, that's not anyone's fault per se, is when we were colonized, they sort of went where they went, and we'll start a farm here, right? We'll do cotton, we'll do sugar, we'll do whatever. Now, within reason, they tended to choose things that it would work in the area, but it wasn't like today where we can literally identify where we have enough water, where we don't. They sort of, 150 years ago, we're far enough, we think there's enough water, let's do cotton. So maybe some of that stuff too, we can incentivize moving things to areas where the resources are naturally there.
I'm liking what you're saying, Dave. I like what you're saying. Is NIMBYism a democratic right? Is it a handbrake? Or is it just reflective of failure in government policy and planning?
All of the above. I think depending on the circumstance, it can be all of the above. I think there are genuine times that you can have not in my backyard. So, for example, let's say, again, on that basis, let's go back 30 or 40 years ago, people that moved out to the northwest of Sydney into Canthurst and Dural, because they said, I don't want to even have a quarter acre. I want acreage. I want horses. I want space. I want whatever. And, at that time when they've bought it, everyone's like, why do you want to be out there so far? Now, anyone else could have bought it for 50,000, but no one did, right? You're living too far out. You don't even have town water. I can understand why those people would turn around and now you go, oh, actually, we're going to bring in another 5 million people and we're going to carve up all your land. You go, but the whole reason I bought out here was there was no one. So I can understand why for them, they're saying not do it. In reverse, for example, let's take Sydney's Luna Park, where you've got people that Luna Park is there, and then they build a high-rise tower, and they go, oh, the noise from Luna Park, you got to show that. So hang on. Luna Park was there. You then bought. So this not in my backyard stuff doesn't fly. And it'd be the same if you went out to, say, Richmond in Sydney here, and you went, oh, the sound of the planes landing. It's like, dude, the Air Force Base has been there a long time. You moved after. So NIMBYism for me is the first start of whether it's legitimate or not would be, did you come in before or after the proposal or the existence of the issue that you're now rallying against?
And increasingly, Dave, do you think we've lost the ability to see the bigger picture and go, you know what? In the same way that you and I have discussed, government decisions that are at times not going to benefit me individually, but benefit the whole, right? Do you think we've lost that ability to look more broadly and say, I get it. I understand why Castle Hill now looks different to what it did 20 years ago.
Correct. And to counter my own position on the people using an example of Kenthurst Dural, the acreage, my counter to that position too is that the history of the world's been things transpire that can force you to go somewhere that you didn't plan to be. As we said in a previous episode with your parents, right? Your parents didn't plan to up and leave Italy. A guy by the name of Mussolini, don't trust the bald guys. Guy by the name of Mussolini got in the bed with a guy named Hitler, a guy with a bad haircut and one with a bad moustache. And, a few years later, suddenly your parents are having to find somewhere else to go and live to make a life. So there are people in Sydney that, used to be back in the day, you lost your job or something's happened, so you've had to move state. Or for me, like I'm over Sydney. And I think it's a great city. I can make a lot of arguments to people why to come and visit, why to come and live for a few years, whatever it may be. But I've got two choices now. I'm not going to slow up the growth, and I'm not going to remove all the traffic when I get out of my road to go places, and I'm not going to suddenly make the shopping centre full of less people. So what are my choices here? My choices are whinge and bitch like an old man yelling at the clouds. Back in my day. And, I'm working on that, or I can move. So plan B is what, the Mauritian Queen and I are working on. It's like, well, okay. Because maybe too in this with NIMBYism, maybe I'd try to be a bit more cognizant that I'm becoming a grumpy old man. Because 20 years ago, I wanted the hustle and bustle. Yeah. I wanted 5 minutes and I'm in Parramatta. If I was younger, maybe go, oh, serious, Dave? You've got that big house and that quiet cul-de-sac overlooking the bush, but in 5 minutes, you're right in the heart of the CBD.
Yep.
But I'm like, I'm not 31 anymore.
I think one like final one that kind of strikes it for me is that the wealthier parts of Sydney got the ability to rail up and rally up against development, right, which drives all the development out into the burbs where you and I grew up, and that's where you get the strain of lack of public transport, lack of public hospitals, people living on top of each other, schools, because we have to put the people somewhere, don't we? So we just shift them all out just to make sure that the lower North Shore and the inner eastern suburbs are all sorted out.
Although one thing I would say, and I love picking on people in the North Shore, even though I've got some very lovely friends that live there that are truly wonderful people. But in all honesty, as someone that used to go over there every Saturday, Sunday, over to Gordon, right in the heart of it, the Pacific Highway and Mona Vale Road, they're a nightmare. Like, to be in all honesty, if I lived there, I probably wouldn't want development until they fixed all that, because there's no public transport there. Even though there's rail into the thing. But what I mean is, like, let's say you lived at Palm Beach, right? Which would be quite wealthy. But the point is, from that corridor right through, all you've got's buses. So there's nothing quick into the city. If at Gordon you want to go down to the beaches, it's only Mona Vale Road that gets blocked off. Like, the infrastructure there is really not designed for us to turn around and say, well, you're half-acre block, let's get 4 of them and we'll have a high-rise. It's like, you're actually not giving quality of life to the people that move into that high-rise. So to be honest, I probably don't think it's one of the prime areas to be developed at this point. So I'm defending the rich here.
For the same reasons, right?
For the same reasons.
Lack of infrastructure, lack
Correct.
of planning.
Correct. Because to me, whether you make $50,000 a year or you make $50,000 a week, you shouldn't drive out of your road and then suddenly just sit in traffic for the next hour to go to work. Like at the end of the day, the most valuable thing that every human has is their time. And you can't buy more of it. So you want the least amount wasted because you didn't think through the development you did and crush load infrastructure.
I like it, Dave. So, Dave, let's think about finishing up with another weave. I want your wild prediction for when Zelensky and the European crew, the rocksteady crew of Europe, rock up to meet Donnie and JD later tonight. Give me some predictions.
Well, so far I've been wrong on the timing of Zelensky's ending, which I still maintain. My position hasn't changed, but it looks like the timing's out. So I still think the problem that he has, and this is based on smarter minds than I, the problem that he has is as soon as he recognizes Russia's control over the Donbass and Crimea and some other areas, and the war sort of ends, so does his life, because there are really hardcore Nazis and people that are part of the control of Ukraine that are like, to the last Ukrainian.
Yeah, and I think I actually saw one of those blokes on TV overnight basically saying, you give away that much land to the Russians, that's not going to be palatable. Yeah.
And this is what's kept him going. But the problem Trump now has is notwithstanding the folly of, I'll fix it in one day. And I'll be generous. We knew what he meant. What he's saying is, I'll fix it pretty quickly. I think he's starting to realize that it's not happening pretty quickly. It's been one of the signature policies of his presidency that he promised. I think he's getting to the point he wants it done. I mentioned it, I think it was in the last podcast we were talking about. From the Russian point of view, I think he's pretty happy with what he's got, but he's probably realizing to take more, at least under this presidency or the current environment, that the cost benefit is not there to keep going. So he'll start to genuinely negotiate. I can see Zelensky being allowed to turn up to meetings for optics, but I can see the negotiations really just going to be between the bear and the eagle. And I can see the US sort of enforcing that through, well, the funding's stopping, the weapons are stopping. So you would negotiate something now, or it's done. So I think we'll see something within the next month.
Let's weave back the topic, Dave. The challenge for our listeners in the next week is to not use, to overuse the term NIMBYism in the most inappropriate manner.
Yeah, in every thing. Just when you order your coffee in the morning, they say, "Can I have a name for that?" Just say NIMBY. That's right. Coffee for NIMBY. Coffee for NIMBY. That would be. I'm going to do that. I used to do that for chits and gigs.
If the person in front of you is ordering a soy mochaccino with a dash of lime, just throw in what a NIMBY.
That's right. Exactly. Only a NIMBY would order that. I used to give names like Beyonce and stuff when I ordered coffee, just for fun. Yeah, I love it.
As always, Dave, what do we say, mate?
You have a right to be wrong.
Take care, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and we hope you enjoyed it. Like us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.